Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Morgan Lee, and I'm part of the business development team here at Tax 990. We are an IRS authorized e-file provider that helps nonprofits and tax professionals easily prepare and file their Form 990 returns online. The platform is designed to simplify the filing process, save organizations time, and help them to stay compliant with IRS requirements. Today, we're excited to continue our grant writing webinar series. This is our third session called Typical Documents Needed to Prepare a Grant Proposal. We are excited. This is the third of 4 webinars designed to help nonprofits build a strong foundation in grant writing and funding opportunities. So I'm going to introduce today's presenter, Ms. Louise Resch, the Senior Disaster Recovery Coordinator and Senior Certified Grant Specialist. Our team had the pleasure of connecting with Mary at the Together SC conference earlier this year. And we're thrilled to have her share her knowledge and support with us today. Hi, Mary.
Hey, Morgan.
So good to connect with you again. I'm going to give you the floor now. We're so excited to hear what's coming on this webinar.
All right. Thank you. And welcome back, everybody. I see some familiar names. Sounds like Dolores is having a beautiful day in Colorado. Candace is in Texas. I'll say an extra prayer for you, Candace. I see you have that tropical depression headed your way. I'll say a quick prayer for you tonight. Miss Fain, welcome back. I appreciate y'all coming back. Does anybody have any questions from the last session? Well, hello, Northwest Florida. Hearing no questions, we're just going to go ahead and get started. One of the things that you're going to need to do, hold on, is there's a variety of documents. What I want you to do is I want you to set up 2 electronic files on your desktop. One is going to be called Documents. The other one will be called Proposals. Today, we're going to focus on what goes in your Documents folder. And the reason we do this is because typically, as we said earlier, you're going to hear at 3:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, this great opportunity. It's a perfect match for you all, and but it's due on Friday. So you don't want to be running around trying to find these documents if you're going to write a proposal. All righty. Before I get into this, I want to give you some data examples, because one of the things you're going to be doing in your grant proposal is actually making a strong case for your grant. And today I want to share with you, and I'll share these again in the next session, but I want you to start thinking about these data that can help make your case for whatever program you're writing stronger and data-driven. How many of you have heard of Healthy People 2030? Healthy People 2030 is a U.S. government study. It actually has data for every county and every state. It not only addresses the typical health-based needs, but it also talks about the social indicators of health, like how far am I from an emergency room? How far is it for me to get to a gym so I can stay in good physical condition? How far is the nearest fire department? So if my house catches on fire, how long does it take to get here? So that's one of the first sets of data, and you can go online. And what I'll do for the next session is I will actually have a slide in the final presentation that will have the links for all of these, but I wanted to let you know in advance. Of course, another good data source is the Census Bureau. What's nice about the Census Bureau is you can boil this down, and I think we mentioned this before. I was working in a local community, and we started out using zip code data, but it wasn't giving us the information we needed on a particular neighborhood in that area. So what we did is we actually boiled it down to 2 specific census tracts. And although they were still in the same zip code, they were in 2 different counties. So keeping this in mind, you could see how even being in those 2 counties can affect your data. Do I have any United Way people on the call today? If not, I would highly encourage you to go to your local United Way in your community. They have something called United for Alice. And Alice stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. It's what we used to call the working poor. It is now designated Alice data. And what's nice about this is it has data that is specific to your local community. And again, we will be giving you those websites on next week's call. So hopefully you'll come back for that last week. For those of you working with veterans out in the community, and we were talking about this earlier, there is a National Center for Data for Veterans Analysis and Statistics. Again, if you're working with a specific population, you want to have data specific to that population and also to your local community. If we have anyone who's working in the realm of food insecurity, my go-to is always Feeding America's Map the Meal Gap. It will tell you the specific food insecurity data for your county, for your local community. And what's nice too is when you're developing outcomes, and we're going to get to outcomes in the next session, this is one of the ways that you can track an outcome for a food insecurity project. How many of you know what your volunteer time is worth? To do that, you want to go to the independent sector. The independent sector has the 2026 value of volunteer time report. And I see Florida is $34.88. Here in South Carolina, it's $32.69. Colorado, you are at $39.99 per hour. So keep this in mind. And this is just a generic, this is your typical run-of-the-mill data. What you want to do to Texas, you are at $34.99. And Cassandra, great question about churches. If you go to that local denominations website. Also, you can work with Church World Service. Church World Service has some great data, not only in the U.S., but around the world, because they do international programs as well. The first place to start, though, with churches is the specific denomination where you're applying, because you want to have that data as close to what they're looking at as well as what you're looking at. Also, I think we talked a little bit about healthcare at the last session. One of the things that if you're getting U.S. Health and Human Services money, I think it's every 2 to 3 years, your local hospital must do a local hospital community needs assessment. That needs assessment will be posted on that healthcare center's website. Here we have Prisma Health. We have University of South Carolina Medical Center. So what we do, and here in Columbia, we have like 3 different hospitals. And what we do is I will go and pull those studies from the 3 different hospitals to see what indicators are consistent and what indicators are different, because then I can look where those hospitals or those clinics that support those hospitals are and see how we can best tailor programming to your community. And these are just a few of the data sources that are available. So instead of waiting until you have a grant deadline and you're on the clock, it's great to have this information saved and downloaded into your documents file. Make sense? All right. So what other documents do you want to have in that folder? First of all, you got to have your organization's budget, because funders want to see who's supporting your program, and they also want to see where you're spending your money. Makes total sense. Also, you want to have a copy of your IRS nonprofit certification letter, also known as your 501c3 letter. Why do you want to have that? Because most funders require you to either have your EIN number, which is on that document, or actually attach a copy of that document to your proposal. And where do I get that? Your organization should have one very well safeguarded somewhere within your organization. If not, you can reach out to the IRS. It'll take you a while to get a copy, but they can provide you with a duplicate copy. In addition to the organizational budget, you also want to take a look at the budget for each of the programs. Say you are an after-school program, but you are an after-school program that's under a church. Well, you're going to have the church budget, which makes sense, but also under that church budget, you're also going to have the budget for the daycare program. Some of it will be reflected directly in the organization, some not so much, like in-kind donations. Also, you want to have a copy of your organization's latest 990 if you're required to do a 990 every year, or at least an annual financial review. Having someone to come in and look at your books, make sure that, remember in the past session we talked about the organization whose finance director thought the $330,000 that they got from PPP would look better in her account. By having an annual financial review and your 990 or an organizational audit, it's that protection for you and your organization to make sure that you're actually filing these documents. I think last time we also talked about a major nonprofit here in South Carolina that, and everybody knew this organization's name, but it wasn't until we went to the IRS website that we found out that this organization hadn't filed a 990 for 6 years. Now that, as I said last time, that's not always a problem. Third-party audit. Thank you, Clara. You're spot on. Third-party audits, making sure you have a fresh set of eyes to actually look to and make sure that there are checks and balances within your finance system. But again, making sure that this is being tracked. Again, the nonprofit I was talking about last time wouldn't have been a problem, except their annual budget is $57 million. So Houston, we had a problem, and they almost lost their ability to fundraise in the state of South Carolina because they had not filed their 990s. And here in South Carolina, we not only have to be registered with the IRS, but we are required by statute to be registered with our Secretary of State's office. In other states, I think Florida, it's Department. Thomas, I'm going to come right back to you. Hold that thought. I think in Florida, it is Department of Agriculture and nonprofit organizations that you have to file with. Check with your local state to make sure that you are registered within your state. And it's not just a matter of you're not supposed to be raising money in that state without being registered. But here in South Carolina, I think it's like $100 per transaction. And remember that large nonprofit that I was talking about? They would have probably between 50 and 100 transactions per day. So you see how quickly this can add up. The same thing with the IRS 990. IRS 990s, the IRS can, there's two things. One, they can fine you up to $50,000. And also, Thomas made a great point. If you don't file a 990 for 3 years, your C3 status can be revoked. I don't know how this nonprofit got by for 6 years, but they did. But they had to go back and refile all of that documentation. Can you imagine trying to go back 5 or 6 years in your organization and having, first of all, to track all that information, but also having to file all the appropriate documentation, not only to the IRS, but to whoever it is to register. Candace says in Texas, it's the comptroller. That's where you go to register, and it's the same with the Secretary of State here in South Carolina. We register to get our name with the Secretary of State, and we also register and do our annual report. That's something else to keep in mind. Not only do you show that you are registered, but that you have done an annual report to those agencies. Because just like the IRS, they want to make sure and they want to see how you are funding and how you are managing your funds within your agency. Okay. How about a W-9 form? All right, I'm going to give you a chance to put this in the chat. Why should a funder care about a W-9 form? Does everybody know what a W-9 form is? It's basically a vendor registration form. It's the IRS vendor registration form. Because if you don't submit a W-9, you're not going to get paid. You might have the best proposal in the world, and you might have, they want to fund you. And Fame made the perfect, they need to be able to report where their money goes in the end. Absolutely. If you're making a tax deductible contribution, they have to be able to show who they're paying it to, just like any other vendor. Thomas, great. Pennsylvania just initiated a postcard report to the 990. I wish South Carolina would do that. That is a great, I'm going to make that recommendation next time I'm over there. Because for smaller nonprofits, a 990 can be a huge pain, especially if you don't have a huge budget. So Thomas, please tell Pennsylvania that we here in South Carolina are jealous, because we would like to be able to do that much easier. Something else you want to have in your documents file is a copy of your organization logo. Why your logo, you might ask? Because many funders are now asking that you attach either an EPS, which is the highest pixel count, if I remember correctly, a PDF or a JPEG of your logo, because in their annual report, those logos may be added to their report showing who they work with. And do you want at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, when you're trying to get a grant in at 5 o'clock, do you want to be trying to chase down somebody who has the electronic version of your logo? I can tell you it's not fun. And I've had to do it with clients in the past. And this is one that gets sticky because it deals with financial money, financial information. Either you have someone that you're collaborating with that can enter the finance data, but most funders are going to ask, because most funders no longer do paper checks. They want to know your routing number and your account number. Now, hopefully you all are in that circle of your staff where the trust level is there, where you can have that on hand, or you have someone within your staff that you can go to make sure that you can get that information on a short. Candace, good question. What if I don't have a logo? Then just tell the funder that you don't have a logo. One of the things that we do work with some of our local communities as they're developing their long-term recovery groups is to develop a logo, because it's part of who you are. Get that picture out there. And you're probably wondering, well, I don't have money to hire a graphic artist. One of the things that I've recommended with clients, and we've done here, is work with your local technical college, their graphic design class, B, local college or university, and particularly their journalism and marketing programs. A lot of these students have to develop a portfolio. So that's where you can make those connections and actually get a logo developed where you don't have to pay for it. Also, some of the community foundations will also fund graphic design. I would encourage you to talk to the funder before you put that in your proposal, though. Faye, good question. Is it easier for a small nonprofit to get a grant if they file at least a 990 EZ rather than a postcard? as long as you have a copy of whatever document you submitted to the IRS, a postcard is fine. I have had many small nonprofits that have submitted a postcard, because if they really, really, really want to know, what they'll do is they will come back and ask for your end of year financial report if you haven't already submitted it. The biggest thing is they just want to make sure that you are abiding by the statute. Thomas said, I registered on Grant Watch and all of this except the W-9 and Secretary of State letter required. I was disappointed. They don't let you do anything unless you pay. Thank you. Okay, let me go back. I am going to take you back, and I'm going to give you some additional. I found a couple free new ones. Grant Watch is not one of the cheapest. There's a new one called Connect with the number 2, and I'm going to type it in. Connect to Grants. One of my partners at the Service Corps Retired Executive pointed this one out to me. Also, for one of my faith-based groups, I know I didn't realize this until earlier this week, but there's one for faith-based funding. And here's one that we use here in South Carolina a lot. I'm cutting and pasting. This will give you some idea of what other kinds of guides and resources are out there. The South Carolina State Library here has all the national resources online. So this is a freebie, and it doesn't cost you anything. And thanks for pointing that out, Thomas. All right. How about do you have an ongoing list of your major funding sources? For small nonprofits, that's typically over 1,000. For large nonprofits, it's typically over 10,000. Most funders will ask you for at least your top 5 funding sources. It might be a federal community development block grant for $110,000 or $1.2 million. You might have a local community foundation who did $10,000. And again, it's going to depend on your organization, how big your donors are. You may have an individual donor. Recently, I had someone I was working with that had a bequest for $100,000. It was considered an individual donation. So we had to list that $100,000 as one of our top funders. Making sense? Okay. You also want to have copies of any news articles or social media posts about your organization. They want to know, how are you known in the community? What kinds of things are you already doing in the community? And also, they want to know, because we're going to get into this in a second, they want to know your social media profiles. And if you don't think funders won't go and check your your funding profiles, you are so wrong. In some cases, they not only will check the organization's social media posts, but they will look at who is on your board of directors, and they will go and look at their social media posts. And we've actually had a funder who loved what the organization was doing, but unfortunately, there were some unfortunate comments that were made on one of the board members' personal social media sites that caused the funder to withdraw the offer of funding. It's unfortunate. The way I had it described to me is, please don't put anything in your social media that you do not want to see on the front page of the local newspaper or the lead story on the evening news. So just like always assume a mic is hot, the same thing with your social media profiles, because you don't know who's going to be looking at those posts. This also goes with what you post on LinkedIn. More and more funders are looking at LinkedIn postings to learn more about the organizations that they're funding. So please keep that in mind. On the positive side, they want to see the good stuff that you're doing out in the community. They want to know that you're already making a difference, and their grant is only going to help you continue to do that. Also, copies of any marketing or PR materials, particularly for the program that you're asking for funding for. They would like an electronic copy of your brochure. Is there a program brochure? Do you have copies of flyers that you distribute to the community? Also, do you have commercials or 15-second spots that you're running on any local community media? And the reason they want to see that is they want to know that you are a professional organization, but they also take into consideration if you're a one-person shop that that has limited resources. And the reason you're asking for this money for printing is because right now you don't have the money to have things printed. So again, having things prepared in advance, because eventually I have confidence in you that you are going to be able to get to the point where you will have all of these documents in one place, and also it's a matter of cut and paste. The last item I want to talk about today is, and this is a new one. Many of the funders now keep in mind, I said earlier that in most cases, the only time you may see a funder is when they're doing a check presentation. And sometimes now that they're going to electronic payments, you may not even see them then. So more and more funders are asking grantees to submit a 5 to 7 minute video of your organization, of your team. Who are your people? And exactly how do you serve the community? I can say that I work for Harvest Hope Food Bank, and I am the grants manager, but that doesn't tell me anything about what they do. Now, if I have someone who visits our food pantry and talks about the difference that food pantry makes in their lives, then it makes all the difference in the world. And I learned this the hard way. I used to go up to the State House and do presentations. I was working with a program that did dropout prevention. And we went to a committee meeting. We had all of our data. We had all the information. We had everything down. We went and did this presentation and didn't get the funding. Okay, so we were a little disappointed. But what happened after that presentation that made all the difference in the world is one of the staffers from the legislature pulled us aside and said, next time, bring the kids. So the next year we went back, we still had all of our data. We had all of our experts and teachers speaking, but we brought 2 teens who had actually graduated from the program and talked about the difference that having that program in their community made and how they were able to graduate from high school because of this program. And guess what? We got funded. So again, you don't think about this. Another example is I used to write grants for the South Carolina National Guard Foundation. And they had this wonderful program for transitioning military personnel back from an overseas deployment. And, you know, I've seen lots of these videos and you kind of just take them for granted after a while. But they sent me this video. And by the end of the video, I was in tears. Because this woman who was not only a military spouse, but was also an active duty National Guard member, did her testimonial, and she said, without this program, I would have never known that I didn't have to drink myself to sleep every night. Without this program, I didn't know that there are ways of addressing my kids other than yelling at them all the time. And when you and I as grant writers go to meet with funders, they know why you're there. You know, in my case, so much so is whenever they see me, it's like, what do you want and how much this time? But if you are able to show those potential funders the difference that their dollars will make, your opportunity for being funded just increased significantly. Can anyone think of any other documents that you might want to have in your folder? Y'all got silent again. Which resumes or bios do you want to have in your folder? Good one, Candace. You want to have the website link. Not only your social media links, but you also want to have your website link because they are going to ask you for your website. Whose resumes or bios should be in your folder? Oh. How about your leadership? Yes, they're going to, board members thank you, Mandy. Absolutely. Just like we want to know who their board members are, they want to know who our board members are and who they know and who they can talk to offline and say, so you've been on this board for a while, you know, what can you tell me? And sometimes it helps to have that advocate. They also want to know, officers of the board, especially the treasurer, absolutely. Because they want to know who's managing that money. If we give you $100,000, we want to know who's overseeing it. We also want to know who your finance director is. We also want to know who your CEO is and why does this person have the experience to do this? Remember a while back I told you about the $330,000 that went away with the finance director? I put part of that responsibility on the executive director for that agency. Previous to coming to that organization, the largest budget she had ever managed, period, was $350,000. This agency had an operating budget of 2.7 a year. Oh, good question, Michael. You're looking for a webmaster? Let me look in my it's not a Rolodex anymore. Let me look on my phone and see if I've got some good webmasters that I can connect you with. Do they have to be in Georgia, or can they be? I've got some folks across the country that might be able to help you. All right. How about the people that are actually going to do the project? How do I know they're qualified? How do I know they have the right education? Those are, I mean, this all sounds very simplistic and it sounds like common sense, but when you're trying to find all of this stuff, Michelle, sorry, I got you. Can you hold that until next week? I will make some phone calls and get back to you on next week's call. But you see how these all sound like real simple common sense stuff, but if you don't have them all in one place, when you are on a tight deadline and you're trying to write the proposal, get the information, make sure that it's within your organization's bandwidth, all of these things, either you're going to miss a deadline or you're not going to turn in your best quality of grant proposal, and which is where we're going to go to next week. One of the things, and I think I mentioned this previously, as part of our commitment, we have developed 7 lists of specific targeted areas, including operations, capital expenditures, and equipment. We will be sharing those electronically at the end of this course, as well as a template we have developed, which we call our proposal boilerplate. And a lot of this you can do in between your proposals, just to have this, because when you start, it may take you 6 hours to 10 hours to do a grant. For others, it may take, once you get things in a format and you've massaged it, it could take you as little as a couple hours. With Walmart, once you jump through all the hoops with Walmart, I've done 13 in an afternoon. So again, having all the materials you need before you need them makes a huge, huge difference. And yes, Cassandra, I'm typing in my emails right now. All righty, guys. I think we've covered a lot today, but I do want to leave some time to answer your questions, or what can we do? What specific issues do you want us to make sure that we address on that last session, particularly where we're talking about grant proposals? Well, either y'all have fallen asleep or I've just done such a wonderful job that you don't have any questions. even if it comes to after we get off the call, my email is in the presentation. Oh, thank you, Candace, for sure. Candace, which state are you in again? Thank you, Christine. We try to make this as down to earth as possible. Texas. Okay, good. I'm going to go check out your website. I think they have record. Yes. Are there any buzz? Oh, Thomas. Excellent question. Are there any keywords or buzzwords, especially with the change of administration in Washington and in many states? Anything that has DEI in it may disqualify you for that grant. The federal government has made a huge change to taking out any and all references to DEI. However, a lot of community foundations actually still include DEI as part of their grant application. This is why it's important to go and read that grant application before you start writing that grant. And Rochelle, yes, this is recorded for replay. Tax 990, I believe, is going to post this so you can go back and listen and take some additional notes. And Fane, it's nice that you and Candace are not far from each other. What I'd like you to do too is reach out to each other, because when we get into actually writing grant proposals, sometimes you want someone who is also a grant writer, because by the time you get done writing a proposal, you will be so tied to it, and you think it is the greatest thing since sliced white bread. You think it's the best proposal you've ever written, and then you go back 3 months later and go, I cannot believe I just wrote that. So again, having a separate set of eyes, and I hope you'll share information with each other as well, because sometimes it helps to have that person who's not tied into that proposal as much as you are, but still has that grant writing experience. And like Thomas said, picking out those buzzwords that some funders don't want to see. One of the things that is very important is collaboration, and not just working together, and not just listing the people that you're partnering with, but also talking about how you're partnering with them. Collaboration, and especially in your own community. One of the things that I found in reviewing past grants is I would get 3 grant proposals from the same area, and none of them have talked to each other. So again, who else in that community is doing what you're doing? Have you talked to them? Angelina, good question. What should an organization that operates overseas and gets 90% of their funding there, and board directors, including employees, can we ask? Yes, you can ask for funding in the U.S. Church World Services works worldwide. There are, and unfortunately, back to Thomas's question, losing a lot of USAID funding. I used to work a lot with Oxfam America, and we also would work on international hunger initiatives, but there are funders out there. Just make sure when you're doing your AI search that you're looking for whatever the type of program or grant you're looking for. You're also going to say, what part of the world, because there are international funders that post their information online. And again, without doing the grant research, and even once you find potential funders, the next thing you want to do is you want to pick up the phone or go to their website and send an email contact saying, I would like to have a meeting with you, either virtually or in person, depending on the circumstances. So yes, there is U.S. funding that helps, particularly in the area of faith-based. I know there are a lot of Jewish organizations that fund overseas. There are Muslim groups that fund overseas. Church World Services, which is like 10 different denominations, also fund overseas. So don't think that because most of your services are overseas that you cannot find funding. Great question, by the way. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to give you back 9 minutes of your life today. And I want to thank you for hanging in, particularly some of my regulars. It's nice. I feel like I'm beginning to get to know you. Thank you for what you're doing in your communities. It really does make a difference. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Grants 990 to do the closeout. Thank you, Clara. I hope you're having a great day. I think I've lost my Tax 990 person. While we have a couple minutes, can you put in what other kinds of resources you're looking for? Just so I can do a little more research between now and the next class.
There I am.
Oh, there's Morgan. Morgan's
sorry
back.
about that, Mary. The
Morgan,
battery.
you're muted.
Am I muted, Dimitri?
Morgan, you're still muted.
How about now? Is that better?
There we go.
Is that better? Can everybody hear me?
Morgan, you're still muted.
This one? Mm-mm. Testing. No? Okay. So.
Oh, they can hear you. I just can't hear you. Okay, we're fine.
So sorry. So had a technical difficulty. The camera died. So apologize. But yeah, Mary, thank you so much. I am going to email you after to tell you thank you since you can't hear me. But thanks again so much for joining us. Everybody, it will be recorded on our website, so don't hesitate to watch any of the previously recorded webinars. Next webinar is going to be Common Components of Solid Grant Proposals. That'll be continued off today's discussion, and that'll take place July 28th at 2:00 p.m. Eastern. We do have additional web resources on our website as well, so go to tax990.com to view those at any time. And thank you so much. Hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day.